Welcome back. I am your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560.
The Answer.
Now, remember, the show is sponsored by Opum Tax Resolutions and the Law Office of Stephen A. Leahy, PC, and their telephone number is 312-664-6649.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we said right before the commercial break, it is the blog segment, the blog. And this week, Uncle Steve, Attorney Leahy, what is the blog about? Blog.
Our blog post might say the blog is an article I write every week. And so this week I wrote an article, and it's titled, Can My IRS Debt Be Reduced? SFR Returns. Now, this is the most common question I get from people. Can you reduce what I owe the IRS? And the answer is sometimes. Okay, so what I want to talk about this week is FSRs. And we talk a lot about... SFR.
You said FSR.
Did I say that? Okay.
Fire safe. I don't know.
Okay, so SFR stands for Substitute for Return.
Oh.
And what this means is if I don't, right, we talk a lot about unfiled tax returns. And so if I have unfiled tax returns and the IRS thinks I owe money, they don't just leave it sit there. They do my return for me. And this is what they call a substitute for return. The IRS will tell you, This is not a service. It is a penalty. Okay?
Oh, wow. This is valuable information. Let me write this down.
So that means that they're going to do it for you, but they're not going to give you any deductions. They're not going to give you exemptions. So that means that it's going to exaggerate greatly what you owe. So you're going to get a bill in the mail that tells you how much you owe, and it's going to shock you because this is what happens. It's like, wait a minute, how can I owe that much money? And it's because the IRS did this return for you. And again, when they do it for you, they hit you hard. So I have a lot of these. And when you hear a lot of this on the radio, you'll hear a lot of these commercials. Someone came to see me and they owed $200,000 and they turned out to have a refund. Well, this is what they're talking about because I've had a lot of cases like this. So, for instance, I had a young woman who hadn't filed in about 9 years. And in a couple of years before, she had sold a home, and the home was worth about $400,000 or $500,000. But she didn't file her return. So the IRS knew that she received $500,000 from this sale. Well, if you don't file your own return, they file it for you, and they included that as income to her.
Oh.
And so when she got a bill that told her she owed over $200,000 to the IRS, of course, she panicked, okay, and she came to see us. So what did we do? Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to go back and you have to do an investigation to figure out what's going on. And after you discover that there's some unfiled returns, then you have to go back and you have to gather these what they call a wage and income documents from the IRS. They have these transcripts, and they're called wage and income transcripts. And so you try to piece back together what happened over those years and try to file these returns. So when we did file those returns for her, again, it turned out that she had a refund coming. So not only did she not owe $200,000, but she had a refund coming. And this is important, okay, because and I've talked about this on the show, the 4 things that will happen if you owe the IRS, if you have unfiled tax returns. The first thing is that it's criminal, and so you shouldn't agree or think that the IRS is not going to come after you. Remember, we always talk about Wesley Snipes, right? He did 3 years in jail. Don't bet on black or bet on black. I forget which one it is. And he went to jail for 3 years because he didn't file his tax returns. Okay, so you have to. It's criminal. Now, a lot of people don't go to jail, but some do. The second thing is you got to remember that they'll file these SFRs for you, and this will kill you. Again, this is what happens. Now, you can only go back for 10 years to get these transcripts for wage and income. So I've had people come to see me, and they've had unfiled tax returns that are more than 10 years old, and they're SFRs. Well, I can't go back and fix them because I can't get any documents. And so now you're going to have to pay it. And the problem with an SFR is there are no statutes of limitations. So if I file my own tax return and the IRS doesn't collect for 10 years, well, the statute of limitations kicks in, and they can't come after me after 10 years. That means the money's gone. Even if I owed them $100,000, even more, after 10 years, if that is gone, they can't come after you. But if I didn't file my return, well, that means they can come after me. They can come after me forever because there is no statute of limitation. And that's huge, okay, because that means that they'll be coming after you for the rest of your life, and you'll never be able to get rid of it. And that's big. That's really important. So here's my advice to people. Even if you have unfiled returns from previous years, this year it's coming on to 2014, file your return. File it this year, even if you have unfiled returns from previous years. So what we do generally is we want to start, we draw a line, and we say from today forward, we're going to be in compliance. We talk a lot about compliance in this on this show, and I have a whole section of compliance on my website. So if you go to my website at chicagotaxteam.com, then you can read all my articles that talk about what compliance is. There's also videos, there's audios, there's a lot of information that explain all this to you. Okay, so it's important. So the third thing is that, now what is the third thing? Because I'm thinking the first thing is we talked about.
Don't ask me, I don't know.
I know.
I've been asleep for the past 5 minutes. I don't even know what are you talking about.
Okay, so the first thing we talked about again is it's criminal, and the second thing is that they'll do the SFRs. Okay, so this was not my
not FSR.
SFR, the substitute for returns.
For returns, okay.
And they will they'll come after you. So remember, if you have unfiled tax returns, to get your going forward, you have to get this. You have to get your file.
That's good to know.
Yeah. That is good to know.
That's good to know.
Okay, so
the show is real valuable. I don't know where I'd be without this show.
Well, again, I gave you the one example. The last example that I have, the most recent example I have is someone came in and they didn't file their returns, and they owed about $60,000. We go back, we do the returns and amend them, and it turns out that they only owe about $5,000. So this happens all the time.
That's a real big difference between $60,000 and $5,000.
Well, $60,000 will make you will give you a heart attack, right? $6,000, maybe you can.
Remember a couple shows ago we spoke about the 1050A or whatever it is. Remember that 1099. So right. Do you still have to fill out a 1099 if you have that?
Again, this is what happens, and when you go back and you get these. The wage and income, those 1099s will be reported on your these transcripts that you get from the IRS, and so you can go back and include those. Remember, I talked about that. If you don't, I just had a case like this where they had a 1099-C and they didn't include it, and so all that they didn't put it in their own return, and so there was a deficiency judged, and a deficiency they do an audit. They don't have to come to your house to do an audit. They can do an audit just by through
emails,
through the mail, right? So they could just look at your return and they can say, "Hey, this is wrong," and they send you a notice of deficiency. And the notice of deficiency will say, "Well, this is what you said, but this is what we found." And so these are the 1099s that you didn't report. And so if they include that as income, all of a sudden they tax you on that. And that's where someone, and again, that's just happened just last week. We had a client come in and they had these 1099s that they didn't correctly report, and that by not correctly reporting it, turned out she owed over $100,000. But if we go back and we amend the return and do it correctly, well, it turns out she doesn't owe $100,000. She only owed $6,000. So these things happen all the time. And again, that's the biggest question I always get is, can you reduce what I owe? And the answer is sometimes. And again, the IRS is often wrong. They often say what you owe, and it scares the bejesus out of people. But you got to come back and you got to do the investigation to find out what happened. And so if you're not filing your returns, this can happen to you. And when they assess it against you, right, then they'll start collection. And when they start collections, that means they're gonna freeze your bank account. They're gonna garnish your wages. They're gonna come after you. So if this is happening to you, or if you need your returns done this year, give us a call at 312-664-6649. You can visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you stay tuned, our wonderful weekly segment, the IRS Scandal, is coming at you right after this commercial break. Stay tuned on AM 560